Prototype RFP information session. Thank you for recording. We're recording this session for any folks who can't be here because we want to make sure that everyone has equal access to whatever information is shared here, the answers to any questions that y'all ask. And then we'll post the recording also on the same webpage that we posted the RFP, so you'll always be able to access it. I am Rebecca Renard Wilson. I am an Assistant Division Director for the Arts Education Division with the LA County Department of Arts and Culture. And I have with me an amazing team of folks. Megan, who is the other Assistant Division Director, our DJ, and then also Rachel, who, yay, just popped on camera. Rachel's going to be helping out. Rachel and Megan are going to be helping out with tech and with questions and helping keep me on track, because I lose track and talk a lot sometimes when I'm excited. And we'll probably talk for about 20 minutes and then have a lot of time for questions and answers. And you will see at the bottom of your screen, actually, I hope you'll see, let me know if you can't, you should see a little icon that says Q&A. And if you click on that, you'll be able to type questions in as you have them. So I'll talk, and as questions come up, you can put them in that Q&A. If you happen to put them in the chat, that's okay too. If you, for whatever reason, can't find the Q&A button, if you're on your phone or, whatever, if you have any difficulties, if you can type questions in all caps in the chat, that would help us be able to identify them. And Rachel and Megan will, kind of be monitoring it to make sure we're not missing anything. And let's see, anything else? I think that's it. I'm going to be screen sharing. And yeah, we'll have some time for most of your questions and answers at the end of my little spiel. So let's take a deep breath and get started. Thanks for also sharing your summer, things you're looking forward to in the summer. It's always nice to think of that, even though it's like super gray and cold over here. Okay, I'm going to start screen sharing, and let me know if you're seeing what I'm seeing. Okay, screen share. Here we go. All righty.
Looks good.
Looks good. Awesome. All right. So as I mentioned, this is our info session for the Media Career Pathways Program Prototype RFP that Department of Arts and Culture just put out. I'm Rebecca Renard Wilson, and I want to also bring someone else into the space who's unfortunately not able to be with us this morning, and that's Mia Johnson, who is really she's the brain. This is her brainchild. Mia is our program manager for the Creative Career Pathways program with our department. And this is a project that she's been wanting to put forward for about 3 years. So we're really excited to be able to finally launch it and to share this with you all. So just wanted to kind of give some information and make sure that we're all clear on what the intentions of this RFP are, because it might, just to make sure that we're all clear. So this is an RFP, a request for proposals to engage a community partner, a community-based organization or an entity. Doesn't have to be a 501c3 organization, but an entity to develop a comprehensive media career pathways prototype. And so for the purposes of this RFP, we're defining media careers as post-production, editing, visual effects, gaming, animation, music production, digital communications, or multimedia production. So it's a really kind of vast scope of careers that we're interested in. And we want to develop this prototype for opportunity youth or systems impacted youth in LA County. And we'll talk about what the definitions of how we're defining opportunity youth and systems impacted youth in a couple of slides. But the real purpose of this prototype is so that a successful model can be replicated and scaled, so that young people who have been historically disenfranchised, historically marginalized, and who face significant structural barriers and social barriers to this field can have more equitable access. And equitable access to family sustaining careers in media. So that, that one statement says a lot, but we really are looking to engage a partner as a thought partner in developing a prototype that can be replicated and scaled for LA County opportunity youth and systems impacted youth, so they can have family sustaining careers in media industries. And we know that the Department of Economic Opportunity has a film and digital media initiative, and we work very closely with DEO. So we know that DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity, we know that there is a similar initiative, and this is done to complement that, because we recognize that there are lots of ways to get this work done, and we can't have too much. We can't have too many programs to support our young people. So why are we putting out this Media Career Pathways prototype? We know that the media careers especially have some lower barriers to entry than other fields. We know that because we're in LA County, that there are, especially because we're in LA County, the media industries have a really high forecast for economic success, and especially post-COVID. We've seen that the media industry has really blossomed and is still thriving even post-COVID, which is great. And we know that a lot of the skills that young people would use in the media careers are transferable to a lot of other industries. And so having a really strong skill set is only going to be more supportive of them getting family sustaining careers in whatever they choose to go into. And then in terms of the demographics, we also know that even though the population of LA County is only 27% white, the creative workforce remains predominantly white. And so we know that our entertainment partners are always saying they want more diversity and things like that. We're not centering their needs necessarily in this RFP. We're really centering the needs of young people, but we do want to ensure that we can address some of those racial disparities in this field. So the audience for the Media Career Pathways prototype, we're hoping that this prototype will serve 20 opportunity youth or systems impacted youth. And we're really looking at serving young people in one of three areas: Antelope Valley, East LA, and South LA. And there's no definition, there's no like formal definition of what those areas are. They're nebulous, and we understand that. The reasons that we chose these areas are for a couple of reasons. One is because they align with a couple of other county initiatives, including the Trauma Prevention Initiative that our partners at the Department of Public Health are running through their Office of Violence Prevention. And also it aligns with the initiatives, the youth development networks that the Department of Youth Development is building. And we also know that these areas have a high rate of a lot of the indicators of, poverty, higher rates of incarceration, those kinds of things that make them either vulnerable or precarious. And in terms of kind of what neighborhoods within those areas, or if you're wondering, well, does my program meet this definition of East LA or South LA, Antelope Valley? I've named on this slide some of the neighborhoods, but again, I wouldn't necessarily worry so much about, kind of where your program is within some boundaries. What I would really lean on, if you're wondering about location, is to use the Equity Explorer COVID Vulnerability and Recovery Index tool. It's a long word, but I'm going to click on it now and just, kind of show you. We'll input an address, and if your program site, or if the site that you're interested in programming in is within the highest needs or the high need area on this index, then, and if it is in what we might consider East LA or South LA or Antelope Valley generally, then you're probably good. So I'm just going to click on that. It's also a really cool tool if you've never seen it. And so this was a project that was done, I think, by the Anti-Racism Diversity Initiative, ARDI. So that's what that tool looks like. I'm gonna, whoops. You're not seeing that tool anymore, are you? No. I'm going to grab an address because I'm always hungry. So I got the address for Mercado La Paloma, which is one of my favorite places to go. All right. We'll go back to the COVID index. We'll put that address in, and then you'll be able to see. And so we see that Mercado La Paloma is in the highest needs area on the COVID index. So that would be an example of an area that would qualify. And it is in roughly South LA. Okay, so we'll go back. The real point too of this is, and I've lost my control window, so just hold on a second. I'll go back. The real point here is that we don't want young people to have to travel far outside of their communities to get to their site. So if you are an organization that's doing service like on the west side, for example, of LA, but you're surveying young people who live in South LA or East LA, that would not be appropriate, because we don't want young people to have to travel far outside of their geographic communities to get to the site. We want young people we want the program to be within their communities, and we'll talk a little bit about why that is. But just before I continue, I want to just make sure we talk about who we mean by systems impacted youth and opportunity youth. And so systems impacted youth are young people whose families have intersected and been significantly impacted by the carceral system, the justice system, foster care system, folks who have themselves or their families have been impacted by housing insecurity, poverty. So those would be systems impacted youth. And then opportunity youth are young people between the ages of 16 to 24 who are disconnected from education and workforce, and who don't have the necessary supports, which would be your social networks, financial networks, familial networks, to really enable them to succeed. And so there's a lot of intersection, obviously, between opportunity youth and systems impacted youth. So opportunity youth might be homeless. They might have grown up in poverty. They might be immigrants. They might have experienced or their families have experienced the juvenile justice system or criminal justice system, transgender, LGBTQ. So there are lots of ways that we can identify folks, but that's the population that we're really interested in serving through this RFP. And so why are we focusing on this population? What are we hoping to solve for? So in 2019, the Department of Arts and Culture engaged a research partner to conduct a field scan of the creative careers. And that field scan really illuminated a lot of structural barriers that young people face, and this population specifically faces, in engaging in creative careers. And so this RFP, this prototype, we're hoping is going to address some of these barriers, including the lack of awareness about creative careers. And so really thinking about, like, we know that people find out about careers a lot of times from their families or from, their family networks. And so if you don't have a family network, if you don't have folks within your social circle who are engaged in these careers, you might not know about them. You might not have any awareness about them, even to think that it's an opportunity for you. Gang involvement or living in a gang impacted community. And we know that a lot of times, gang turf lines are invisible. We know that there might be multiple gang and turf lines. We know that there are multiple gang or turf lines within East LA, South LA. So we're not necessarily saying that by locating a program within that community, young people aren't going to have to traverse invisible boundaries, invisible social boundaries. We're just trying to help solve for, or trying to mitigate a young person's traveling across boundaries that might feel alienating, that might feel dangerous for whatever reasons for them. And so that's why we want to really root this program in the communities where the young people are. We also know that there are some organizations within communities that are considered neutral ground, and yours might be one of those spaces that's neutral ground for a young person. Another barrier, stigmatization because of immigration status or your incarceration status, your experiences of trauma, unstable housing and food security, inability to access Wi-Fi and other kinds of technology, and the increased time burden that poverty and unstable housing kind of puts on folks to have to take care of their basic needs, which might make it more difficult for them to engage in programs or to engage in training. Again, lack of social capital, access to individuals within social networks. And then this piece, the cultural marginalization and alienation, it's less difficult to kind of define, but folks know what it feels like to be in a space where you don't necessarily feel welcomed, where you're, because of your socioeconomic status, your race, your language, you don't feel like you kind of belong. You feel like you're being judged. And then there are the structural barriers that might come with education. And so young people who whose high schools don't offer CTE programs, or who can't get into their school CTE programs because there's a teacher who's like blocking their way, or there's lots of things that are happening. And so this program again is hoping to help address some of these barriers. Another thing, before I move on to the next slide, that Mia Johnson brings up often is this idea of self-efficacy and wanting to ensure that young people, especially the young folks that we're really centering in this work, feel a sense of agency and a sense of self-efficacy. And there's this feeling of confidence. Like you might have all the skills in the world, but you might lack still that feeling of agency and that feeling of like, I know I belong in this space. And sometimes that is one of the key barriers, like it's another invisible barrier. And we've been kind of hearing that as we've been going around and talking to young people. All right, we're almost finished. So what should this Media Career Pathways prototype include? It's broken down on this screen a little bit differently than it's written in the RFP. But we want to make sure that the prototype obviously has media hard skills. And the hard skills we want to be aligned with the California Department of Education's AME workforce training model. So they recently, the California Department of Education's AME Council just recently, I think in the past year, kind of finalized a set of like industry standards that the CTE programs are using. And because this program is a community-based program, we want this to be a complementary kind of track, complementary community-based CTE track. So if a young person can't access CTE programs in their school, then we're creating a space or trying to create a space for them to be able to access those industry-aligned standards and industry-aligned training in a community setting. We need the program to address or to teach young people some career soft skills, at least 20 hours, because we know that that's a minimum requirement for other programs. And so we want to make sure that a young person who leaves this program is prepared to enter other programs that might have that soft skills, that number of hours of soft skills training as a prerequisite. We want to ensure that the program centers youth leadership and youth voice, where young people feel like they have voice and choice. And then we also want a program that is culturally sustaining, where young people can see folks who reflect their backgrounds, and again, so that young people can feel comfortable and begin to see that reflection happening. We want the participants to be connected to creative career advisors. And these creative career advisors, we hope are reflective of their backgrounds, their experience backgrounds, their demographics, who can help to coach them and advise them. We're not using the word mentorship because we understand that mentors, like a mentorship relationship, is a lot deeper and a lot longer. We are using the term advisor, or you can also think of coach. And we would like the creative career advisors to be able to support young people up to 1 year post-program, just as a person to help kind of check and guide. And then we also want the young people to be connected, the participants to be connected to another pathway post this program based on whatever their interest and their readiness is. And so that other pathway could be another program. It could be higher education. It could be work-based learning. It could be apprenticeships. So we want them to not leave the program and just be like, oh, okay, well, what next? We want them to be connected to something, to what that next step in the pathway is. And then we want the program to also be able to address the young people's basic needs. Again, understanding, all the things that we named before in terms of opportunity youth and systems impacted youth. We want the program to provide participation stipends, any kind of equipment or technology that they might need to participate and be successful. Case management, if that is what they need, academic supports, if they need those, basic needs stipends or basic needs supports or transportation, diapers for children, whatever it is that they might need just to support their basic needs, connections to supports for physical health. So really being able to tailor, we would like the program to be able to tailor how each of the young people in the program are being supported based on what their needs are. And so what are we looking for in your proposal? So this is just kind of like the spirit. You can see all of the specific questions and kind of how we're doing scoring in the RFP. But we're really looking for evidence that the key program staff who would be working on this program have a commitment to and have experience working with this population of youth in a culturally sustaining and supportive way. We're obviously looking for a program partner with expertise in industry-aligned media career training. We want an organization or a program partner that has a real commitment to the community served. We don't want an organization that's just kind of helicoptering into a community without a real commitment to that community. We want to see that commitment. We want to see a history of and an ability to deliver all the programmatic elements that we outline in the section of the RFP that says approach to services. And either doing that just through your organization, if that is within your organization's wheelhouse and strength set, or partnering with another organization or with other folks who come in as consultants, as case managers, as tutors, whatever it is. So we don't want an organization to try to do it all, because a piece of this is about building the pathways. And we know that in pathways, there's not just one way to get from point A to point B, that we really have to engage a whole network. And so we'd like to encourage, we want to encourage through this, your partnering and networking to build those pathways, to build bridges across. If we think about stones in the river, a lot of ways to get from one side to the other side. We also want to see equitable payment of staff. So a lot of county proposals will score the proposal based on the lowest bid. And we're not interested in that. We want to ensure that your people are being paid well. We want to ensure that the young people are being paid. And so we're really supporting equitable payment and comprehensive services, not who can do this the cheapest. And then we, again, want to ensure that the comprehensive needs, we want to see in your proposal that that you're putting forward a way to really support the comprehensive needs of the young people. And then what are our expectations of our MCPP provider? We really want to, well, the first bullet, we want you obviously to develop and to deliver the program that'll best meet the needs of this population. We're really looking for a thought partner in this. So this isn't like about us giving an organization dollars and then the organization going off and never being in conversation with us. Because this is a prototype, we really want to learn and be thought partners in this process. So we're not going to micromanage by any means, because we see this community as the experts in this work. That's why we're putting this RFP out. But we do want to be engaged in conversation. We do want to, find out what you're learning. We do want to be able to say, hey, we have this information here. How can that inform this process. So we really want a thought partner. And then because this is a prototype again, we are going to be working with a third-party evaluator, and it's going to be really important for the organization or the entity that's running the program to really be able to meet with, to be in conversation with the evaluator, so that at the end of this, we have some really strong data that we can take, we can revise the program model, and then we can scale. And so we have every intention of replicating and scaling the refined model, the refined program. And I think that's really important to understand. And we want to replicate and scale beyond just the organization that we engage with as the partner in this. So I think those are kind of some of the key things to understand. And then the last slide is a sample timeline. The proposal is definitely due on June 6, 2023, but these other dates are tentative. It's what we think. This is our best guess at how time will flow. Might happen quicker than this. But proposals are due July 6th. We hope the contract will be awarded in September of 2023, in which case the planning can begin, recruitment of participants can begin. And then thinking just about like how November and December flow, anticipated start date of the actual program with the young people in January 2024. So that's kind of what we're thinking about in terms of a sample timeline. And that is all. There's a link here, and you all are going to get these slides, but there's a link here to the actual webpage where the RFP lives, where this recording will live, where a written FAQ will live. So if you any questions that you ask here, we'll be able to type up and put in an FAQ document that will go on that website. If you email questions to the Arts Ed Collective at arts.lacounty.gov email, that's where those will live also. And so that is all. I'm going to end the slideshow. I'm going to stop sharing, and we are going to open it up for questions.
Hi, so questions are starting to come in, and the first question we have is someone noted that one thing we've heard from young people is that being able to safely access safe transportation is a need. How does this prototype address that need? Can there be funding allocated within this to fund transportation to ensure higher levels of participation?
Yes. So once the contract is awarded, in your budget, in the budget that you're developing for the RFP, if you can anticipate kind of what some of those transportation costs are, include that as a line. So that would be an example of one of those basic needs supports. And so if you've seen that as a need in your community with the young people that you work with, please include that as a line item in your proposed budget. And that goes for any other needs that you have. So you have complete freedom in how you structure the budget to be able to address the needs of the young people that you are serving.
Shall I keep reading them to you, Rebecca?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The next one, is there an expectation that the org will need to supplement the budget to make this program happen?
We're hoping not. I mean, the budget that we put forward, the $450,000 for 20 young people, we're hoping will be enough to cover. We don't want organizations to supplement, because that's what you do all the time. We want to get out of that model. We kind of shopped that number around to in a couple of different places and hope that it feels like it's enough to be able to support the comprehensive program that we're putting forward.
Can we apply with an existing program?
You can. If you already do all this stuff, amazing. Just tell us if there are any ways that you might kind of revise your program, if there are any ways that you would, if there are any things that you might do differently to address a specific need that we're outlining in our RFP, that you might not have, then yes. But otherwise, you can, if you're writing about the program that you currently do, that's awesome. Please. That makes your life easier.
Okay. Here's going to be a good one. Can we partner with orgs serving impacted youth to bring our program there to work with their youth?
Yes. So this is the piece in our, I mean, actually it would be helpful if I pulled up the RFP itself. But there's a section of the RFP in the, I think it's the experience section, where you have to talk about, you're asked to talk about the communities that you serve. And if you don't serve young people in one of those 3 communities outlined, then you can get a letter of partnership from an organization that's based within that community. And that letter of partnership has to outline and has to say that that organization will allow you to program within their space, and that they will support the recruitment of young people from that community. The reason that we're saying that is because we understand that there are some organizations that are they're trusted partners within that community. They've been there for decades. The young people know them. And again, we want to be able to take advantage of those spaces that are really seen as like neutral ground, where they have relationships with young people. And so if you have a partner that is willing to do that, then you can put your program inside of that space. We hope that that's a real partnership, that it's not, again, just kind of, for lack of a better term, opportunistic for this prototype, for you to be able to do your program within that space. The expectation would be, or the hope would be, that you would continue programming within that space with that partner.
Can we work with a school in one of these communities, or do we need to work entirely outside of the school system?
So that's a good question. We are wanting this to be community-based. And so for all of the reasons that not all of the reasons, but for, to address that need, that there are some programs, young people who might not be able to access a program within their school will have the opportunity to do that in a community setting. We really want this to be community centered and not school centered. So, no, in terms of partnering with a school, in terms of like, well, actually, the person who asked that question, can you come off mute and tell me a little bit more about what you mean? Because I don't want to give a definitive no without hearing more of the nuance of your question.
Hi, this is Sarah from Film Independent. I wanted to know, because we're working with a bunch of schools in these areas already, and some of them are charter schools, and we've been doing like arts integration with their classrooms, many of which don't have any film program or any like real arts program. So I wasn't sure if it was something that we could build into that, or it would have to be like separate or after school, or with a different organization entirely.
Yeah, it sounds like that would not be the kind of the right fit for this program.
Okay.
It sounds like you would want to pick a location that's more community based outside of that school day.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
One's name that if there's a question and I know exactly where it is in the RFP, I'm pasting in that language and putting it in answered. If you still feel that that doesn't get to the root of your question, we can raise your hand too. This doesn't all have to happen through the Q&A piece as well. We can have a dialogue to get clarity. So what else?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This is Jaime Zavala with our Orcs LA. So this would definitely then be kind of an after school type of program, or outside of the traditional school day type of program.
Yeah. That's what we're thinking.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense and it's kind of it feels a little obvious to me, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm tracking with y'all. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
The most recent question is trying to reinforce this, and maybe if it's already been answered, but if we run out of school time programs with school partners that are in underserved communities, and or we also work Boys and Girls Clubs and Best Buy Teen Tech Centers, is that okay?
That's my question.
Great.
Yeah, because we've been engaged in this work for a while and with Fresh Films. And so same question. And there's certain school districts we work with where we run these out of school time programs, and they actually open it up to make it even more equitable so that we're not just preferencing. And again, these are underserved schools that don't have film labs or film programs and things like that. Sometimes the school district will work with us and open it up to neighboring schools that are close enough. So again, addressing that access and transportation issue that came up earlier. So thank you for answering that too, because stipends are so important for that. But it's a good question, because I mean, the Boys and Girls Clubs, it's much more wide open to the community, and we actually help them market those programs to try to get as many participants as possible. Oftentimes it's the schools that then are also promoting those programs to the neighboring Boys and Girls Club. So
am I hearing you to say that the school becomes like basically the school becomes a community center setting in the out of school time? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
I mean, in that case, so I'll be honest, like when we first began thinking of this prototype, we were thinking of basing it within the county parks. And so the county park would become a site and young people come to the park. If the school is kind of serving a similar purpose in that community, if it's a community school, then that feels aligned, that feels the same. What I would be concerned about is if only the young people from that school could
100%.
then participate.
Right.
Because then we're entering that same access issue, that same barrier issue.
Exactly.
As before. But if the school is saying you can program within this space and essentially will do, if that school is acting as that site partner and that school says you can program within our space and we will help recruit, we're a trusted community entity, we'll help recruit, then that feels like it meets the needs. And I don't know if Sarah, if that's the relationship that you were describing or if you were describing a different relationship.
Yeah, it's not, but also a potential possibility.
Okay.
Yeah, in school, we're be serving those students during the day, but the out of school time, there's a little more flexibility. Can I then ask the same question for, I'm figuring your answer is yes to the other side of this, which is we serve Boys and Girls Clubs, right? San Gabriel Valley, different locations in the state. And so that's more community and acceptable, correct?
Yeah, for sure. And I heard also Best Buy Teen Tech Centers.
We do. We've been a long time provider of our film and media programs for the last 20 years, both serving Best Buys and Boys and Girls Clubs, in addition to the out of school time. So that's why I was asking.
And I see Chanel's question, does that hold true for university campuses as well? I don't know if that's the question that you have your hand up for, Chanel, but
it is, yeah. And the university, we're a partner with universities through their community engagement program. So it would be more of a site partner because we work with young people throughout the county and throughout the city. And so I was just interested in knowing if that would be a problem. Our film department has really great resources. We have kind of built-in mentor processes that we've already started. So I was curious if that would actually be a barrier to us doing this work or if it would be an actual benefit.
I mean, I can't say whether it's going to be a benefit or a barrier. What I would just speak to is if the site is located in a community, in one of those three communities,
it is.
If the young people that are being served are opportunity youth, systems impacted youth within there. I'm going to say this, it might sound, this isn't necessarily in direct response to your question, Chanel.
Okay.
But we don't necessarily want to we don't want to cream. Like a lot of times there are programs that are for people, youth of color, and they're creaming young people who are more privileged within that group. This is not that program. We want young people, we want systems impact and opportunity youth. And again, this is not in response to your this is not a direct response to your question. The reason it came up with this question of universities is because, you know, like there's especially in LA, like the UCs, there's a lot of privilege there, and there's programs
Right.
that are popping up, or not popping up, but there's programs with schools, you know, with different arts programs, and we're not sure if they serve young people who are experiencing all of these barriers. So we just
Yeah.
want to make sure that the young people that are at the center, the heart of this, are served, and we want to make sure that the communities that are at the heart of this are served.
Absolutely. Rebecca, thank you for that. And I would say our university, it's in the Cal State system. We serve students who are absolutely not privileged. Majority of our students are immigrant based, but also I'm partnering with the Center for Engagement. And so we do work in the community, and we bring young people who are part of that community, Boyle Heights area, South LA area, and they're able to have experience with these college students as a part of it. I mean, that would not be the full basis of what we would do with your work, but I do want to make sure that it's a site that we could utilize, and maybe we could talk more about it outside of this. But it's not a privileged university. The students there are not the cream. And I understand what you're saying. So I specifically work with young people who have dealt with foster care, who are homeless, etc. That's the program that we work with Media Done Responsibly.
So I know I'm not going to be able to like talk to you offline about it just
No
because
problem.
of
No
equity,
problem.
but
Of course.
for you and for everybody on this call, if you're kind of working through or processing those same kinds of questions, you know, again, just keep the intention, the audience who we're intending to serve, and the spirit that, you know, I kind of outlined earlier, and then just write to that, you know, like show in your proposal, excuse me, how this program, this site is really meeting, it's addressing the needs of opportunity youth and systems impacted youth in Antelope Valley, South LA, and East LA. So just bang it out in your proposal.
Okay, perfect, will do.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that having it at that site would not be a barrier to doing, you know, to being accepted in the program. Okay, perfect.
Okay, I see lots of hands, and I also know, Megan, it looks like there's like 12 questions in the Q&A piece. So how do we
Let's
want to do this?
do hands.
Okay, let's do hands.
Yeah.
I see Nick, then Tina, then Carmelita.
Thank you. Yeah, real quick, it's really a clarification about a question that was asked in the chat about the number of participants served. The project sort of timeline is 2+ years, but then in the response to the question about how many participants annually, it sounded like 20. So is it 20 participants total being served in a program that lasts a little over 2 years from start to finish? Or do you want to see a turnover and see 20 students and then a turnover and a new 20 students being served annually?
That's a good question. So it's a little confusing. We give a lot of cushion time in the RFP because that's how county contracts have to work. It's like the best way. If you meet barriers for whatever reason, if you get a slow start, we want to make sure that there's enough cushion time in the contract so that we're not butting up against a kind of a arbitrary time. We want to be sure that you have the space and the time to be able to do what you do. We also don't know how long your program will be. So when we were kind of devising and thinking about what this program model might look like, you know, there's all kinds of program lengths. There's like super intense programs where the young people are engaged full time for a month, or there are programs where, you know, the young people are just coming like once a week or twice a week. it could be a 30-week program. It could be a 10-week program. So we don't really know what the length of your program will be. The expectation is that you're only serving one cohort because this is a prototype. So, so you're going to serve one cohort of young people. Those young people will finish your hard and soft skills program. They will be connected to a pathway. They will be connected to a creative career advisor. And then there's a year of that creative career advisor kind of post-program support. That from the start of when those young people start your program to the end of that year post-program, that's kind of that's the program term. But it's still that same one group of 20. This isn't you finish that program, you bring another group in. It's $450,000 for 20 young people to do those things that we kind of outline in the scope of work. So I hope that answers your question. Again, we put in a lot of time in the term so that we're not hitting any county contractual issues.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tina, Carmelita, Ruby.
Good morning. I work with WLCAC and we're super excited about this project. We operate a 7-acre cultural facility in the heart of Watts. And I heard, for one, I hear the clarity about the size of the cohort, the amount of funding, and then I also heard added clarity in this session about not requiring contractors to supplement the funding. I didn't see, so I put this question in the chat and I'm raising it now, but I didn't see specifics about whether it's cost reimbursement, which tends to be standard, or whether there are startup costs and cost reimbursement. And I know that changes operations and or supplements also. So I wanted clarity on that if possible.
Thanks for that question. That's super important. The way that we do our contracts, we are able to give a certain amount of funds. I think it can exceed, you're going to correct me on this one, Megan, it might be between 5 or 10% of the entire contract. We can't give more than that up front. But we understand that you need planning, you need funds for planning, you need time, you need funds to engage whoever your partners are, folks getting paid every 2 weeks or every week, and county takes 6 months to get you a check, so we are able to do a disbursement of funds. Whoever is awarded the contract will create your deliverables timeline, and that will outline for you kind of when you can expect first payment, what the deliverables are, and that the first deliverable might just be your and in fact I think we outline what those first deliverables are. So it's kind of written in your scope of work. So that kind of gives you a sense of how the funding flows. It is not necessarily a reimbursement, it's a deliverables based payment. Carmelita and then Ruby, and then we'll go into the Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My question is specifically about the regional factor. And I know that in our program, Boyle Heights Arts Conservatory, we find that at least 50% of our participants come from areas that are further than 5 miles away. We feel, especially because this is focus on soft, hard skills and career development, that it would be really important to widen the scope of what regional means. Once these participants go out and are placed in actual jobs, they're not going to be working with people that are only from their neighborhood. They're not going to be interacting with people that are only from their few blocks away. And we have found that it is really valuable to not just code switch, but to hood switch, and to be able to have a group of people that are not like each other, do not eat the same food, do not speak the same language. So maybe if not now, I'm wondering if in the future, once this pilot gets off the ground, if it could be a factor that you do include regional, outside regional participants, so that you can mimic a real work environment, which I strongly support. So I guess my question was that regionally, if not now, in the future, would that be included?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question about the future. I think I know that we will get a lot of really incredible data and feedback from the partner that we work with and from the evaluation. So we're really going to be paying attention to those things. Thank you for bringing those insights in, Carmelita. We structured the RFP in this way to try to ensure that we're ensuring that we're reaching those young people in those 3 specific areas, and that we're not creating a program where young people are going to be forced to have to move outside of their community. We want to be able to really infuse all communities with these kinds of programs. And so we don't want to create that, we don't want to create or perpetuate the realities that so many young people face of always having to leave where they're from to go, engage in the opportunity. And so for this prototype, that's what we're doing. And I think that feedback that you're sharing and that, that other folks have, in addition to the data that comes out of the evaluation, the data from the young people, the data from all the folks who will be engaged, is going to be really important for how we think about scaling. So thank you for that. Ruby?
Hi, thank you, Rebecca. I think you've kind of answered my question in some respect. I was interested in terms of the program structure and what would be eligible, specifically around an internship program that works with young people from the areas that have been discussed, but would place them in internship programs at organizations, at creative agencies that are outside of that community. That would be one part of the program. There would obviously be other parts of the programs that are within the community, but a big part of that would be the experience through the internship. So I'm wondering if that would be eligible, or if not, what aspect of it could be possible in terms of creating awareness, creating opportunities to explore different industries through like first person contact with professionals in that area.
Yeah, so in terms of internships, in any of those, the subsequent pathways that young people do, those can take place anywhere. Those are not restricted to that community. And again, kind of depending on how your program functions, and you would have to kind of be really intentional about describing it and ensuring that it's meeting all of the things that we're putting forward. I can't necessarily answer the specifics of your question because I don't know what that necessarily looks like. I don't know if I'm hearing you correctly in saying that your program model is like internship centered. And so you bring in young people to do internships in different places, or is it that they engage in some kind of preliminary training and then they're sent off to internships?
Well, we're modeling off a current program, certainly that we have in place, but I think the idea of utilizing the internship as kind of something that's happening at the same time. So there is training around soft skills, social emotional learning skills, as well as those hard skills. And there's an opportunity to have that coach or mentor at that internship site too. So there would be both taking place at the same time. And of course, it could be scaffolded if that makes better sense, but that's part of what I'm curious about.
What you're describing feels like it's appropriate. And I think, again, it's really about how you write it and describe it. As long as those young people are not like always having to travel far distances to access the program, whatever that program is, as long as they don't have to travel far distances to access that program, as like the norm, then I would say yes. But again, I'm answering these things kind of on the fly without having any real understanding of what it looks like. But I would just go back to the intentions, and really looking at those barriers that were outlined, and they're the same barriers that are outlined in the RFP. Thinking about, like travel and transportation, thinking about, crossing boundaries. I hear what you're saying, Carmelita, about, folks are going to have to do that all the time. They got to know how to work it. For this particular program, we want to kind of create a space where they're not having to do that, like all the time while they're getting their training. So that's, yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but I'll say again, write it out in your proposal, and then we'll be able to, once the proposals are received, we'll go to panel. There's a community-based panel that will review all of this. And if there are proposals that are surfacing, it's like, wow, these are really strong, we have some questions that we want to ask. There is an opportunity for questions to be asked during that phase. But do your best in writing out your program model and describing how you think you want to serve the goals and the audience that we're outlining.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so I know it's 11 o'clock, and folks might have to roll off. This is a dumb question. Rachel, was this set until 11:30 or 11 o'clock? Or anybody? Did the Eventbrite say this ends at 11 or 11:30?
11.
11. Okay, and I see there's a lot of questions that are in the chat. Because this is being recorded, I'm gonna go ahead and start answering the questions in the chat, and then if you have to log off, then please access the recording. We hope to have the recording up by the end of this week, and you'll be able to get those questions answered, and then we'll also transcribe those answers and put them in the FAQ. So apologies that we're running over, but we will get to the questions. And even if I'm talking to a blank Zoom room, an empty Zoom room, I will answer all of the questions. And thanks for those who came, who've got to log off now. So let's see, we've got, only 2 open questions. Awesome. So would an internship program that places youth from the defined areas, that was your question, Ruby. Okay. Is the 5 to 10% startup cost payment a confirmed option? What do you mean by that, Tina?
I was in the process of answering that one.
Oh, okay.
So I can say that we will be paying out based on the deliverables in the scope of work that's in the contract, and there isn't a dollar amount or a date in that deliverables table yet. So it'll be in response to the proposal that wins this contract, as a portion of the full amount for submitting the plan and the budget. So it is not set in stone at this moment in time. It would be developed with the winning bidder.
Thanks, Megan. Any other questions? Cool. I did my 5-second teacher pause. Oh, wait, okay. Oh, okay, Ruby's question. No open questions, yay. Okay, so I think we're done. If there are no more questions, I want to just thank you all for joining. Thank you so much for your interest in this. And I look forward to seeing your proposals. If there are any other questions, I think we have until the 16th for questions to come in, and then we'll post all responses by the 23rd. We'll also again post this recording. So thank you all and have a wonderful rest of your week. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.